Where is INSURTECH headed next? This is where indie agents own the answer. Welcome to the Vertafore Insurance Podcast. Let's go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vertafore Podcast. I'm here with two of my favorite people in the industry, and I'm pumped to be here with Tolga Tezel and Sid Rowe with Vertafore here with me in studio, and we're hanging out, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of fun stuff here. Tolga, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Sid, you good?
Oh, I'm ready to go.
All right. Sid's ready. We're hyped. So you got to get a little more energy going. What time is it where you're at? Where are you at?
It's 11 a.m. where I am.
Have you had your coffee yet this morning? Are you hyped and ready yet?
I had like 3/4 of a coffee, so yeah, I'm getting there.
3/4. So we're rocking like 4 or 5 over here, but that's okay.
You're a little behind there, man, but we'll take it.
I know. I'm catching up.
There you go. Get after it. All right, cool. So, let's just get into it and talk a little bit about you, Tolga, and talk about, a little bit your story. Tell me a little bit about Canopy Connect. And those who have been under a rock and don't know a lot about Canopy Connect yet, tell a little bit about that origin story a little bit.
Yeah. We know what Canopy Connect is the easiest and fastest way to get all property and casualty lines of information verified from the carrier, from your prospects' accounts. And it allows agencies to take control of conversations with prospects because they're able to advise them directly against their complete insurance profile, and they don't need to confirm information or ask additional questions to gain an understanding of what insurance a prospect has or what assets they have insured. We just pull it directly from the carrier and make that data available to the agency that the consumer permissioned their data over to. And the origin story there is I actually didn't even know that this was a problem in the insurance industry when I prior to starting Canopy Connect, but I'd really fallen in love with consumer permission data through some prior work that I had done at another company, and really fell in love with the idea of building a business where you were helping individuals like you and me get value and convenience out of our own information and enabling them to share that information with a business that they wanted to work with, that ultimately allows both the consumer and the business that's working with them to make better and faster decisions and use verified information and complete information to make those insurance decisions. And the way that I found out that this was even a problem was just through talking to an agency owner, and which led to talking to multiple agency owners. And what I found was that most, and this is I guess still true today, most agents are selling insurance over the phone, and they're leaning on conversations that are happening over the phone to get the information they need to try to offer an insurance proposal to somebody. But the problem is that the agent needs to know. The agent wants to know the full household opportunity and the full profile. They want to know what insurance policies you have. Do you have an auto, home? Do you have umbrella, life? Do you have a condo, motorcycle, boat, RV?
Right.
What assets do you have that need to be protected under insurance, and what insurance do you already have? And they're getting that information just through phone call interrogations mostly. So they're getting on the phone, asking you dozens of questions that you don't know the answers to, like what's your VIN, what's your annual mileage. Go ahead, Pete.
No, you brought up a good point. The word you use, I love the interrogation. It does feel like an interrogation sometimes when you've not both been in agencies before. Having to ask those questions, almost like you have that big shining light in their face of like, all right, now what's your VIN number, and what was your date of birth, and what is this? So it can be intimidating asking those, and I would say for a lot of green producers out there and newer producers, sometimes they shy away from asking some of those leading questions.
Yeah.
And so you're able to get that information without having to ask all that intrusive information and questions.
Yeah, and it makes sense why it's not a particularly fun experience for the agent or for the insured. Nobody really wants to get interrogated over the phone, trying to being asked questions that they don't know the answers to. But the agent needs to know your situation so that they can provide you tailored and good advice that allows you to make the right decision around your insurance and to provide you a proposal that makes sense for you. And because there wasn't there wasn't a way to exchange verified insurance information prior to Canopy Connect, so agents were just getting on the phone with their prospects and asking them those questions, or they're giving them a long quote form to fill out where they're asking those same questions. And they need to gain that understanding to work with you, so they really had no other option. But the problem is that when you're asking people all these questions that they don't know the answers to, it hurts the relationship, because each question is, you're kind of making somebody do work,
Right.
To then serve them. Yeah. And you also can't, because you're asking the policyholder directly, they also just don't know a lot of this information. So a lot of them will just drop out of the funnel before they even get a quote with you. The statistics show that about half of prospects drop out of a quoting flow before they even get to a quote, because either there's too many questions that are being asked, or they just don't know the answers to them.
Or you're like, asking about their VIN, they have to go out to their car.
Yep.
You to tell them, if you open the door, look there, or look on the dashboard, take a picture of it, and having them have to go through all that.
Yeah. Well, I think too, there's an opportunity cost, right? Because if you have 10 to 15 minutes of airtime with a prospect, and you spend 8 to 12 of those minutes peppering them with interrogation-esque questions that cause them to do work, you have to ask yourself, is there real value in that conversation, right? So it's not just the fact that you're eliminating the work and you're making it making it easier for them, but you're also giving or enabling that producer to have more time to build a real relationship, right? To ask questions like, so, tell me about why you're even calling me in the first place. Is there something going on with your current insurance agent? Tell me about why you bought this house in this neighborhood, right? There's a whole story that can unfold if you're not taking 8 to 12, 80% of the phone call saying, what's your VIN number?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, and the value to to the insurance buyer is not asking them a bunch of questions. The value is what the advice that you're able to provide to them, and the conversation you're able to have with them after you gain an understanding of their situation, because then you're able to tell them, I see that, you have, lower limits than what we would recommend in your zip code, because you live in an area that has, let's say, a lot of expensive vehicles out there. So if you have an accident, then your limit's not likely to cover the damages for an accident. Or maybe you don't have the right coverages on your homeowner's insurance policy. Maybe you should have an umbrella policy where you don't. A lot more people should have umbrella policies than do today. You're able to have those kind of conversations once you have an understanding of their insurance as it is today. But the value comes with the data that you're able to collect, and that's why agents are spending that time on the phone interrogating the prospect. But asking somebody those questions is not delivering value. It's just collecting information so that you can deliver value. So, and that's where Canopy Connect comes in, is because you're able to in 10 seconds allow the policyholder to share their data with you. You can totally skip that interrogation and just jump right into advising them on their current insurance.
10 seconds.
Yep. I'd say he's going to blow your mind and tell you that, but he did it.
That's insane. Yeah. That's
10
awesome.
Seconds. It is. It's incredible. And then, you imagine when you can move it through, PO rating, and you could get a quote within a matter of 30 seconds or whatever, with multiple carriers.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Okay, wait, can we pause on the integrations? Because I want to talk, we
got to get to that in a minute, but
PL rating and the agency Zoom, but I want to talk more about your story behind Canopy Connect, because you kind of brushed over it, and then I could tell you went full on INSURTECH founder, and you were like, I got to tell you about my baby.
Right.
So let's step back for a sec. Tell me about Canopy Connect Tolga. You mentioned that you fell in love with this idea of sort of helping people
data.
Yeah, consumer permission data. Like how can we? There's always that scary Big Brother, sort of Black Mirror edge to the data side, where it's like, no, you should keep all of your data private. Don't let anyone have it. They're going to abuse it. It's bad, right? And I think you're shining a bit of a optimistic light on that idea and saying, well, hold on, people should have the ability to use their data as they want, right? If they're choosing to go through the insurance process, like that's a moment where, hey, I want you to use my data for my benefits, right? And so that's awesome. But how did you, like, Canopy Connect is such a unique point solution in the industry. How, I'm always so like wowed by just how these ideas come about, right? What caused this? What were you staring at your ceiling fan at 2 a.m. and just said, you know what? That's what I'm gonna do. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah, well, so I guess rewinding a little bit. So I've spent my entire career working in startups, and I really enjoyed the startup environment. The first startup I joined full time was acquired by Dropbox, and so I spent a few years at Dropbox after that. And then I was looking to do something where I felt like I'd grown a lot as an engineer and as an engineering leader, but I wanted to be part of a business that its profit engine was aligned with some kind of like pretty tangible societal positive impact. Mm-hmm. And I found that in joining a company that prior to starting Canopy Connect that was doing consumer permission data. It was prior to starting Canopy Connect, I joined this startup that was helping individuals share their credit information with businesses across borders. So they were able to get fair access to credit when they moved to a new country using their credit history in their former country. And I saw firsthand that you could build this business where you're putting the consumer in the driver's seat. They're the ones who's deciding to share their information with the business, and when they do that, they're able to achieve a better financial outcome for themselves because that data can be used by the business they're sharing it with to provide a tailored product for them and provide them good terms on that product as well because they have an understanding of you.
Yeah.
And through being a part of that company, I saw that both that you could deliver this, you could build a profit engine off of consumer permission data, but that consumer permission data helps an individual like you or me achieve a better financial outcome for themselves, and it helps a business understand the consumer so they can serve them properly. So it really felt like a true kind of win-win. Because when you build a profit engine off of something that's doing good for people, that means that you can continue to scale that impact because the engine continues to scale with a positive impact. And then the other thing I noticed was that regulatory precedents have generally been set around the world now that you as a consumer own your data, even if another business happens to have a copy of it. Because it's your data, it's ultimately you get to decide what is done with it. But the problem is that you can't really leverage those rights effectively unless there's infrastructure in place that allows you to pull that data from where it is now and share it with where it needs to go next. Yep. In an automated way, and in a way that connects into where it needs to go next. And I just randomly stumbled into this problem. You asked about how I found out about this. It unfortunately it wasn't through just staring at my ceiling like you were sort of describing, but just talking to agents and hearing from them that they had been interrogating prospects over the phone to gather their information. And one agent told me that she had switched her process up to something better that was working, had a higher completion rate for her. And what that was she was driving to her clients' houses and showing them how to log into their online insurance account because all of the questions that she was answering, asking, what's, like I was saying earlier, what's your VIN, what's your annual mileage, what are your premiums, limits, deductibles? Mm-hmm. Do you have a home? Do you have a boat, a motorcycle? What about the details on your home, like the roof material, all of that information, the current carrier already has that information. So that's why she was driving to her client's house and showing them how to log into their online insurance account. And then she would download their information, take it back to her office, type it into her radar to get quotes.
To your clients' houses? That's crazy. Every one of your clients driving their houses, logging them in, And then I guess that's where it came from.
That's what I said. I was like, that's pretty crazy, but it made sense why she's
dedication
doing it,
too.
because the alternative is like asking a bunch of questions and then people telling you, I don't know those details. Let me get back to you later, and then you just never hear from them again.
Right.
So when she told me she was doing that, that this was late 2019. So it was already pretty popular, the idea of connecting your bank account to different applications. Like you could connect your bank account to Venmo and then pay money to your friends or receive money from your friends. You could connect your bank account to PayPal, to TurboTax.
Mm-hmm.
So this notion of connecting your bank account was pretty popular by that time, and I was just like, well, if you can connect your bank account to a third-party application or to a business,
mm-hmm.
you should be able to connect your insurance account too, and
mm-hmm.
and that's where the idea started.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you went this route, right? Because when I think about so here we have a problem around data collection in the sales process for insurance. And it compounds when you think about the complexity of commercial insurance too, right? And specialty lines.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people who, or I should say not a lot of people, but there are more InsurTech solutions popping up trying to solve this data collection issue by going to third-party data pools and saying, hey, purchase this pipeline, purchase this rater, purchase this thing, and you put in a VIN, or you put in a VID, or you put in whatever it is, and we'll populate the rest of the information with this third-party data pool. And what tends to happen, I see, is accuracy issues, because we don't know, well,
mm-hmm.
where did this third-party data pool get their information from? And even the best data enrichment companies have accuracy issues. You have issues from a financial side of things. It's really expensive, right? If the core competency of that InsurTech is sales pipeline or is rater, now they're expanding and having to become a data company, right, by ingesting all this third-party data. And so now you've got issues with, well, is that our core competency? And if I look at my expenses, I'm spending more money on this third-party data pool than I am building out my own software, but my software is the core competency, right? So you have those issues, and how does that cost pass down to the customer? Like, you kind of circumvented all these issues by saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to let the prospect give me permission to just go get their data from their current carrier. Because I know it's going to be accurate. It's coming from their current policy. The carrier's not writing on inaccurate information, right? Or we hope they're not. Maybe there's some things that need to be updated, but for the most part, we can say 90 to 95% accuracy, which is good standard.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no cost. Like, what's the cost there? You're not paying the carrier any money.
No.
It's just so smart.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So smart.
Appreciate that, Sydney. And contributory, I think what you're sort of alluding to with the third party Prefill is that those tend to be based off of contributory databases, and the problem with contributory databases is not everybody reports, and when they report, it's infrequent and varies in how often it is updated. Even when it's updated regularly, the frequency of those updates is not real time, and as a result, the data, what we hear from our customers is that when they use contributory databases, about 60% of that data is stale. So the problem with and the data that is returned is also just less rich. You don't get visibility into all of the coverages they have. You get a few of the coverages that are on the policy. There are whole policies that will be missing from that contributory database, so you won't know if they have an umbrella or a boat or motorcycle or RV, and then an agent will then get on the phone with the prospect, and then because they can't trust the information, they're just spending all this time confirming details like, oh, is this your vehicle?
Right.
Is this, are these, do you have these coverages? Are these the limits on your policies? So you're still spending all this time just asking questions and confirming information, even if you have a contributory database that you're using, because you can't fully trust the data. And like you said, Sydney, the way that we solve that problem is we connect directly to the source of truth, to the current carrier.
Yep. So how are you guys thinking about expanding into? Because I think you're mostly focused on personal lines right now, if that's correct. Okay. So
we do commercial as well.
You do commercial.
They are into commercial. They just launched that this year.
Seriously.
So you can
So-
get
There's
you can get
more
loss
work to do
runs
for
now.
sure.
You can get loss runs, seriously.
loss
Sorry,
runs,
I just
driver
interrupted
lists.
you.
No, you're
I'm
good.
like, I'm shocked over here.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we were super excited he launched that this year, and a lot of people are jumping in. He's still got some more carriers to add to it and whatnot,
Wow.
but it's going really well so far. He's doing some big things there.
First off, congrats. Second off, thank you.
Yeah, dude, for sure.
Okay, so what like lines of business did you start with? Do you only have certain carriers? How is this working strategically as you're building this out?
Yeah, we started with a focus on personal lines, property and casualty, because we recognized that we could do this for personal lines and commercial lines, and each of those has there's multiple types of policies under each of those umbrellas. And the way that we looked at it is, let's start where the volume is the highest, which is personal lines. And so initially there was a focus on personal lines and mostly focused on auto and home, which is the most popular lines that people quote on the personal line side. And then we just continued to expand it from there. So we expanded from home and auto on the personal line side to then covering all personal lines. And then in sometime in 2022, we started building commercial insurance connectivity, and just out of the gate, we wanted to position the infrastructure to be able to pull and structure and normalize all of the property and casualty lines in the account, because what every seller wants to know, they don't want to just know what's your auto or what's your home. They want to know what is the full opportunity in this household that I could sell into. And so getting those other policy lines has always been really important for our customers. And so when we started building commercial lines, we built it in a way where we're able to pull all of the P&C commercial policies as well. And like Heath mentioned, we're also able to return the loss runs directly from the carrier. Same kind of idea. You send a link out to the policyholder, they select their insurance carrier, they log in, and then we connect directly to the carrier and pull their commercial policy information and provide that to our customer, just like we do on the personal line side.
Yeah.
And then on commercial, it's certainly more fragmented, and there's a lot of variance in the way that carriers represent the data. So there was more mapping type work to do, but thankfully we had started expanding our team around that time, so we were able to accelerate that, and that's continues to be a big focus for us this year.
Yeah.
And I would imagine, to answer her question, it'd probably be easier to say which carriers are not integrated with Canopy Connect than the ones that are, because there's a large number.
Yeah, we covered 96% of the personal auto insurance market and 91% of the personal homeowners insurance market. We do all of P&C for every carrier that we integrate with. So, so awesome. Whenever you link somebody's account, or whenever a policyholder links their account, that you're getting the full picture across all of their P&C lines. And same thing in commercial, except for commercial, we have less coverage. So there's more work to do there. We cover 57% of the commercial insurance market today, and by the end of the year, that'll be at 77%.
What I think is cool is if, let's say, home and auto with a carrier that also does their commercial, could you imagine if you got the home and auto information, like, oh, y'all also own a plumbing business, then you've got the prospecting area. You got everything you need right there. I can go ahead and get you over to the commercial lines department. They can quote your plumbing business. It's beautiful.
Heath's about to go back to being an insurance agent right now. I'm feeling it. I'm like feeling the energy.
Exactly.
Like, hold on.
Every time I talk to Tolga, I get excited about it because there's so much there that you could do with it.
Yeah.
And what I love about his positioning on this is he's not mentioned price one time. It's been educating your customer. It's been, about protecting them, about helping them out. And it's been a prospecting deal. It's never been about price, and it's never been about, it could be easily positioned in a way about price and speed, but it's more been about a benefit to the producer, but a benefit to the client. I love the way you position it. I think it's fantastic.
And, if I see we're talking about price shopping, there's no insurance agent or agency that really wants to sell on price. Because if you sell on price, you're going to lose on price to somebody else eventually. And, it's a pretty fickle relationship if the only reason somebody's becoming your client is because they're saving a few bucks. they're gonna leave at some point for that same reason, and it's just kind of a race to the bottom. And what everybody really wants to do is sell on value, and that's why, through using Canopy Connect, because you're skipping the interrogation, you're able to jump right into their current policies and addressing the gaps in those policies. You can position yourself as their trusted advisor, and that is what ultimately leads to a sustainable and positive relationship for both parties, and avoids having to just win on price all the time.
And I think it's so smart to position, because again, a buzzword right now is the CX and the customer experience, customer journey, and you're able to throw yourself right in the mix in that conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
Should we talk integrations?
Get it.
Okay, so
Now she's going to get excited. I get excited about the sales part. And she
do.
get excited about the integrations
tech
part of it.
Yeah, listen, say APIs and I'm in.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so tell me a
Love
little
it.
bit about PL rating integration and the agency Zoom integration, which I know is still being built out. But how does, from a workflow perspective, this is the big question I always get. And we do webinars with awesome insurance agents almost every month who come on and they showcase how they've built out their tech stack. Actually, we've shown Canopy Connect, I think, on 2 or 3 of the
We
webinars.
have.
So that's why we're like, we got to have Tolga on the podcast. But the biggest question, or the question I get most often during these webinars is, okay, so how does this change my workflow? Right? What is my workflow? Right? Agents are very process oriented. We have to do the same 16, 17 things day in and day out. Different carriers, slightly different products, different people in the mix, but it's policy changes, it's the sales process, right? New business, it's onboarding, it's renewals. And so those steps are really important. So just walk me through where does Canopy Connect fit in the sales process? And then how does PL rating come in? Where are we solving for some inefficiencies that were previously part of the workflow? How does Agency Zoom work in?
Yeah, well, I mean, the typical workflow, the sort of status quo is, getting on the phone with your prospect and asking them a bunch of questions, and then typing that information into your rater, and that might be PL rating, to then get some quotes. That means that you're spending 30 to 45 minutes on discovery with your client, and then a further, typically we hear from our customers something like 30 minutes of data entry to then produce the proposals that you can put in front of your client. And just sort of across the industry, there's a lot of data entry that's happening from system to system, because a lot of systems don't talk to one another. And so, outside of pulling, being able to pull the data directly from the source of truth, the next step is connecting it into the tools that you're using today as an agent. So, so that's why from the very beginning of launching Canopy Connect, we were always asked, oh, does this integrate with PL rating or my CRM or my agency management system? And we launched our integration with PL rating in late last year. And what that allows for is that an agent can send out a Canopy Connect link. The policyholder goes to the link and selects their carrier, logs in, and we connect to the carrier and pull the data, and then we populate it automatically into PL rating. So not only did you not need to do the 30-minute phone interrogation, but you also didn't need to do the data entry to populate the data into PL rating.
Yes.
And you can issue out a proposal within seconds of of the policyholder submitting on the link. And so that ends up saving 45 minutes to an hour in the workflow. Some customers tell us it saves them even more time than that.
Yeah.
And you're jumping right into advising them on how your proposal protects them better than what they currently have. Mm-hmm. And just jumping right into the value conversation and numbers to back it up, and being able to really compare and show your client why they should purchase your offer and how it protects them better. Mm-hmm. So that the workflow with Canopy Connect is really, sending out the link or embedding Canopy Connect on your website to collect the information, then populating it into your your rater, could be PL rating, or into your system that itself connects to the rater, like Agency Zoom.
But yeah, from that speed and efficiency standpoint, you are able to add a lot more value back to not only your customers but your staff. And now they've got more time to work on other things, since they're not falling behind. I think there's a lot there.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting time in the market now where obviously I would imagine everybody listening to this podcast has seen the news of different, carriers pulling out of different states, and in some places it's harder to write business than before. But then, we have conversations with agents every day, and we hear a bit of that, but then we also hear on the other side, we hear agents telling us right now that their phones are ringing off the hook because somebody's policy got canceled and now they need insurance and they're calling us to do it. So, it's a pretty tumultuous market right now overall, but there's a lot of opportunity that exists in good times and in bad times. And when other businesses are kind of pulling away, that means other businesses are pushing and getting aggressive. So, there's and the other thing that's interesting in today's market is that there's more requirements that carriers are putting in place for agents. In some cases, you've got to have bundled business to write with a particular carrier. And in other cases, you have to collect, more details on prior history than you had to before. So the data collection piece is getting more and more onerous, and the requirements needed to place business are also becoming more onerous. And so, getting that full picture of your client is more important than ever now. It was always important, but especially in the market that we're in now.
I want to make sure we cover one last step in the workflow here that I think will blow some people's minds. So, a lot of people think, well, every tool or every solution I have has to be connected to or talking to or integrated with every other tool. And that's not necessarily true. You have to really sit down and think about what is my workflow? Where in that workflow is each solution bringing value? And then how does the data flow across those systems? So let me give you a really quick example of what that looks like in this situation. So as Tolga explained, right, you're in 10 seconds, you're getting permission from the customer to pull all that data from the carrier. So now you have everything sitting in Canopy Connect. With another push of a button, so maybe another less than 10 seconds, you're then moving all that data over to PL rating. Now you're going through that rating and quoting process. Well, with another click of a button, you're actually moving that PL rating data over to AMS 360. And so, let's say that prospect turns into a customer, which of course you guys are all amazing insurance agents, and so therefore, of course, they're going to become a customer.
Of course.
You want to make sure you have a record of this transaction in your agency management system. Download's going to come and fill it in with other, missing pieces that maybe didn't come over, but most of the data is going to, come in. It'll set up the client profile, client records, all that. So 3 clicks and you've moved that data from, and I forgot Agency Zoom because you're setting up the lead, right? So you've moved it into 4 systems, which is just, insane, right? So
in less than 60 seconds, probably.
Right, but like Canopy Connect doesn't have to be integrated with AMS 360 necessarily, right? And so sometimes I feel like we get questions from agents around, well, does this integrate with that? And I step back and I think, well, why do you want it integrated, right? And so just be really careful and cautious as you're building out your tech stack. Think about that workflow. Think about where the integrations are important and impactful.
Love that.
Right? Totally.
That's some good advice.
That's totally true.
Yeah.
You got to look at the like you said, look at the workflow from a bird's eye view and ask yourself, how should it work? Like what data do you need at which step and where? And but I also totally agree with the sentiment that systems should be talking to each other more than they are today. There's just
100%.
The amount of double and sometimes triple data entry in the insurance industry continues to boggle my mind. And there's certainly a lot more work to do sort of across the board. And, our philosophy on this is, and we know that nobody's really looking for another dashboard to log into, right? Like nobody wants yet another thing to have to log into. So our philosophy on this is we want our customers to spend as little time as possible in our dashboard and as much time as possible in the tools that they're already using. So that's why, we connect into tools like PL Rating and Agency Zoom, so that you can just use the data from those systems that you're already in. And in fact, I know you mentioned that there can be a couple clicks to transfer information, but we have a configuration of our PL Rating integration where you don't even need to click a button. It just automatically pushes into PL
The one
Rating.
click, it just does it all.
Stop.
Unreal.
Because it's just like every time you're filling in a form field, every time you're clicking a button that you have to, you're gonna have to click again the next time. It's just not a good use of anybody's time. So it pains me when I hear people doing double and triple data entry, and I think that our philosophy around it is integrate with the best in class vendors that our customers are using. That's why we built the PL Rating integration and Agency Zoom, and just allow them to use the data from those solutions. And it unlocks a lot of things that, there's pretty obvious why typing into your rater, eliminating data entry to your rater saves you a bunch of time, but then populating the information into your other systems, like let's say your CRM or your lead management solution, it opens up opportunities like being able to market and run marketing campaigns to clients that maybe you didn't close this time around.
Yeah.
So, making the data, like giving your team a single pane of glass with rich data in there where they can not only use it for sales, but also for marketing efforts, means that you're able to serve your customers across with verified data across all the interactions you have with them.
Yeah, that's a great point of using it as a prospecting tool, because you may quote 10 people using the Canopy link and you may only write 5 of them, which is a great number, but you still got 5 prospects in your pipeline for next time. And you've got all their information, all of their deck pages. It's crazy. And driver list and the whole nine. I think it's fantastic. The other thing, before we wrap up a little, is I wanted you to share a little bit about using this with Referral Partners and what you guys did there, because I think it's super cool for people to hear that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Heath. And the way that this came up is that we learned through talking with agents a while ago that a lot of them are leveraging referral partners to get regular leads to their business. So a lot of agencies partner with auto dealerships, financial managers, realtors, lenders of different types, and they also go to networking events. They have a varied set of referral partners that they're using to help build their funnel, their top of funnel, and gather interested prospects. And I think it was one of our customers that came up with the idea and told us of having custom links for your referral partners, so that let's say you're at a dealership. The dealership already has an existing relationship with you through working with you to buy your car, and they're able to provide a custom branded link that includes the branding of the dealership, that when the client submits, it goes to the agency, you, the customer, from the dealership, and it allows for a white glove experience for the consumer. It allows the referral partner, in this case the car dealership, to look good because they're providing a value added service to their client, and you as the agency, you receive the data that you need to then communicate with the policyholder, and jumping again straight right into advising them on their insurance without having to ask them a bunch of questions. So it provides for a really smooth handoff from your referral partner to the agency, and the agency is able to come in immediately with value to the policyholder. So that's become a really popular way that our customers use us. And a lot of successful agencies are already using referral partners, so this probably won't seem anything that's too crazy to them, but providing that seamless workflow from the referral partner to the agency with a branded link really helps keep that process warm.
But I mean, the biggest thing when I was training agents is a lot of times they're hesitant to ask for the home if they're getting the auto information, or vice versa. If it's coming from a lender, they're a little hesitant to push. But this way, you don't have to push anything, other than a button. But then you've got all the information right there for their home, their auto, their umbrella, whatever. It's all there. You don't have to ask any further questions.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's actually super important, that what you just said about, when, let's say you're going back to the example of buying a car at a dealership, the most obvious insurance to sell at that point is the auto insurance. But if you only ever sell the auto insurance to that client, that means that you've only got one policy line with that client, and your retention is going to be significantly worse than if you bundle with, let's say, auto home or auto home umbrella or auto home life. When you get your policies per client into the 3 range, 3 average policies per client, that's when you start to see in the high 90s in terms of retention. And so if you're stopping at just the policy that is immediately obvious in that referral transaction, then you're going to suffer later when your retention numbers go down. But if you're able to use that opportunity where somebody's already thinking about their insurance and making it easy to shop them across all of the policies that they have, now you're able to not only provide more value to the policyholder and if it's saving them more money with a bundle, ultimately writing, that allows you to write more premium and increase your retention. And for the policyholder, because this is a moment in time where there's some kind of life event that occurred that necessitated it, getting a review of their insurance, it's one of the best times to have that kind of conversation with them. If somebody's buying a home, for instance, or refinancing their home, these moments are some of the best moments in an individual's life to advise them on their insurance policies. So it's a really good moment to capture that full picture, and then you as an agent, you later not only do you make more more revenue through that multi-policy transaction, but you also get much better retention down the line.
And instead of in that happy, exciting moment for them of buying their first home or buying a new home, instead of having to go into what's the year of the roof, what's the foundation, what is this? Yeah. Now you can be like, oh my gosh, how exciting is it? You just bought your new home. Tell me about that. And you can get excited with them and build that rapport and that relationship instead of the boring, stupid questions that we have to ask as insurance agents. So
exactly,
good for you on that, man. Anything else you got for him on that?
No, that's it. That's
Dude,
it.
I think you crushed it. I love what you're doing over there at Canopy. I appreciate you coming in and hanging out with us. And guys, if you haven't reached out, if you haven't done anything, go to usecanopy.com and check it out. And, connect with Tolga on LinkedIn. And get to know him and what he's doing over there. They got a lot of things going on. Again, thank you so much, Tolga, for hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me, Heath and Sydney. It was a pleasure.
Well, that was a great episode.
Amazing. It was an amazing episode.
I really enjoyed that content. Guys, if you enjoyed that content and you want more of it, make sure you hit the subscribe button.
Nah, dude. You got to tell them to crush it. Crush that subscribe button, guys.
All right. Whether you want to crush it, smash it, hit it.
Bop it?
Sure, we could bop it. Either way, guys, we don't want you to miss another episode. We enjoy spending time with you, the VIP.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.